How much time do we have? Okay. Hmm. Mm. Oh my God.
Good morning.
Good morning, Attorney Simone.
Anastasia. Oh, well.
Please,
How are you?
Good. How are you? Please hold for Santina.
Hey, sweetie, how are you? Oh, Anastasia?
I gotta start the show.
What you say?
I have to start the show. Yeah,
Do we have 2 minutes or one?
We have 30 seconds.
Oh, wow. Shoot. I looked up, it was 6:57 on here, and I guess time does fly. Okay.
You said you started off talking about Brittany.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what you're going to play, but okay. I don't know what that's going to mean. But what surprised me. Oh my gosh. Oh God.
Good morning
Let me
and
brace
welcome
myself.
to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily the views of
Means a
this
whole
station,
lot that I
but
trust
strictly
you
of our
enough to
host
do
and his
that.
guest. To speak with Reverend Jackson live, call toll free 1-866-59-4-HOPE. That's 1-866-594-4673. And now, the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Out of prison. Hey. Oh, Jeremy, I just love you to pieces. My technical producer and his ideas. Well, Brittany. Hey.
No, wait.
Mm-hmm. I can't hear myself.
Right, because did somebody just mess up my whole... I have no sources.
Really? Oh my gosh. We're coming up soon.
Wait.
Robin Lynn, I'm saying things to everybody on. Hey.
No.
Okay.
There we go.
Hey. Hey. Woo-hoo. You're the man, Jeremy Geiger. That's my technical producer and engineer. I'm Santita Jackson. Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Let's talk about Brittany Griner today and Georgia, the Senate runoff. What happened there? Greg Palast will be joining us in the second hour. We got an all-star cast talking about Brittany Griner this morning. Her incarceration stirred up a lot of conversations about the pay gap for women generally, between the WNBA and the NBA profit sharing. The NBA players get 50% of the profits. WNBA gets 20%. Now, mind you, the argument has been made their audience is not as big, but shouldn't there be more done to promote them? Think about it. Venus and Serena, two of the biggest draws in all of professional sport. So it gives lie to the notion that women cannot attract a crowd. They've been the biggest draw in tennis for more than a quarter of a century. So let's talk today about Brittany Griner, but also in the second hour, we will be talking about the Georgia Senate runoff. Did you know, for example,
for Santina, please,
that Senator Raphael Warnock lost more than 80% of his mail-in ballots because of voter suppression? Think about that. That was his margin of victory in 2020. We need to talk about that, everybody. Voter suppression played a tremendous role in this particular election. But he did win, but he won by pretty thin margins. So what does that mean? You know, it was not a landslide, but it was a win, and we will take it. And then Kirsten Sinema left the Democratic Party. What does that mean for the Democrats? We still have the majority. So let's talk about all of this today. First up, let's talk about Brittany Griner. Let's talk about all of the discussions that have been brought forth because of her incarceration. You have, thank goodness, she is home, and her wife Sherelle has tweeted out that they're making adjustments and they are just grateful to be home. Can you imagine being without your partner for 10 months? Ooh, but the question is, who's been left behind? Paul Whelan, uh, a veteran who is, people are wondering, how is it that he's been left behind? And many people on the right are saying that how can you trade a basketball player and leave a veteran behind? But his situation is a little bit more complicated than the corporate media are saying. He was not included in the prisoner swap, and for his portion, his twin brother and his family have been very gracious. They said the president did the right thing in ensuring Brittany Griner's release. But this former U.S. Marine, Paul Whelan, who is a big executive, but he is also someone who holds 4 passports. He's a Canadian citizen.
Yes.
He was born in Canada to British parents. He's of Irish heritage, and he's an American. So he carries American, British, Irish, and Canadian passports. It's clear that his situation is a lot more complex than the corporate media are saying. How many of you knew that he carried 4 passports? It doesn't have to mean anything, but it can mean a lot. That having been said, we are also looking at many Americans who are in prison for decades for drug possession, for marijuana possession. All of our laws are very, very uneven. When you go out west, people are able to make money off of cannabis. And even in the Black community, there have been a lot of complaints that Black entrepreneurs are not able to get licenses to open up cannabis shops. So there's a lot that we got to talk about. So let's talk about Brittany Griner. I want to know what you think of her release. 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. I hope you'll meet me on my show, on the Santita Jackson Show, on the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT, from 6 to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time every weekday morning. And we carry on Facebook for another 30 to 60 minutes on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. So everybody, let's talk about Brittany Griner, and then we'll talk about Senator Warnock. What a victory, but not without a lot of struggle. Indeed, he said, we have a mountain moment, everybody, tonight. That Tuesday night. What a tremendous speech he gave. He said, but we now need to go into the valley in the morning and do the work. Oh, well, come on. He's the senior pastor of Ebenezer. And one of his predecessors was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and then his father, Daddy King. So let's talk on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. First up, let's talk about Brittany Griner. God bless you, everybody. Stay right here.
Have to live, and I wanna give. I'm completely positive. I think this time around I am gonna do it.
Your opinion counts. 1-866-59.
All right, so I
Thank
only
you.
have State Representative Myers and Attorney Select.
Okay.
Get in contact with
There's a clear
Rodney
path to
or-
$2,000
Okay,
for
Terry
gold
O'Neill.
and $25
Okay.
for
Oh, well, just keep trying Terry because she's out west. It's 2 hours behind.
Okay.
But let me say hello to
They got you. They can hear you.
State Representative
and
Myers.
Attorney Select.
State
Yes,
Representative
I'm here.
Myers. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
And we have got Attorney Anastasia Sinat. She is the president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association of Illinois. Both of you are brilliant, and we're very excited. Reverend will be joining us shortly, as will Cook County, well, not Cook County, but Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis out of Texas. We're just going to have a round robin of people weighing in on Brittany Griner. And then at the
Hi,
top
this
of the
is
second
Terry.
hour.
All right, Attorney
Oh, okay.
O'Neill.
And Terry O'Neill.
For Santita.
Thank you so much.
Terry O'Neill.
Yes, good morning.
Hi.
How are you, my dear?
Oh, it's wonderful to hear your voice today.
And you?
I know. Let me put my, hold on. And let me, Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers is with us. And attorney Anastasi Sanat, brilliant young attorney. She is the president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association here in Chicago, but she's also my soror, which makes her fabulous.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay. Now, are you in a sorority, Lakeisha?
Of course I am. The best one.
Delta? I know, right? If you say Alpha Kappa Alpha girl, I'm gonna put you on mute. I was like, Delta the change. Oh, bless your heart. Well, it's all love, you know that. But I'm really glad that we're all here. Were you in a sorority in college, Terry?
I was not. No.
I hear you. My mother said she was an Omega sweetheart, and that was enough. An Omega sweetheart. She said, I couldn't be bothered with those women.
Yeah, right. I was too busy trying to do my studies. So trying to work hard.
Oh my goodness. My father was pleased when I pledged. My mother was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" But did those numbers? I'm gonna pitch the numbers to you about how white women voted. Okay.
Yes, good. I've been looking at that. It's just
well, I started looking as soon as you said it. It took me a minute.
Yeah.
But I mean, just so ladies, State Representative Myers and Attorney Sanat, the overwhelming majority of white women voted for Herschel Walker. The overwhelming number. Hey, Dave, Robin Lynn, Earl, I got to say hello to. Good morning, Earl. Reverend will be on in a minute. Miss Tucker, Michael, and Stephen, how you doing? Sending you all much love today. Thank you all for joining us today. Getting ready for Christmas. Oh, hey, Oren, how you doing? Okay, Dave joining us just about every day. I'm sending you much love. Okay.
Hello.
You're listening to Keep Hope Alive.
All right. I'm about to come up. I'll
Is that
call
Reverend?
you as soon as I'll call you back in like 2 minutes. 1 more minute. Right.
What you want, baby, I got what you need.
Oh my goodness. The great Aretha Franklin. Oh boy, we need some respect. Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. We're going to be talking about Senator Warnock and his big win in Georgia in the second hour. But first, let's talk about Brittany Griner. So happy that she is on her way home. Some people on the right have said Paul Whelan should have been released as well. How can you leave behind a former U.S. Marine and for a basketball player? The cases are vastly different, everybody. Vastly different. There have been many months and years of efforts by U.S. diplomats to include him months to include him on this deal. But that didn't happen. And it's very interesting. You know, as I did a little digging, he was born in Canada to British parents. He's of Irish heritage. He holds 4 passports. He's been a frequent visitor to Russia. So he holds an American, British, Irish, and Canadian passport. So it seems that his case is a little bit more complex just upon that. And he was dishonorably discharged from the Marine Corps, but they're still sticking by him. Court-martialed for trying to steal more than $10,000 from the government. There's a lot of little pieces here, but if he shouldn't be imprisoned, he shouldn't be. So we're going to see how all of this plays out. But for his family's portion, they've been so generous in their embrace of the release of Brittany Griner. So let's talk about that, everybody. This superstar from the WNBA, whose imprisonment has sparked a lot of questions. Number one, why was she in Europe in the first place? Why was she in Russia? And more than 70 WNBA players are over in Russia. Well, no, they're over in Europe. They're playing essentially a second season. Now, mind you, okay, the NBA has an 82-game season and they have a 36-game season. Sometimes they go over there not only to keep their skills sharp, but they're also over there because there's a vast pay gap. And it needs to be closed. But they are dealing with the pay gap that all women have to deal with. So let's get right to it, everybody. Let's get right to it. And then we see the drug laws. Many Americans who have been found guilty of what Brittany Griner was found guilty of, just carrying cannabis oil, which many people use medicinally, particularly those in her position. They're in jail for years. 4 years. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red, in jail for years because of that. So our drug laws in the United States are very uneven. You can sell cannabis and cannabis-related products in some areas, but not in others. You go to jail in some areas for possession, but not in others. And on and on and on it goes. But let's start with our panel today. Of course, we have got Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers. We have attorney Anastasia Sanat, the president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association of Illinois. We've got the former national president of the National Organization of Women, Terry O'Neill, who has a lot to say about this. But first, let's start off with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend, you have perhaps more than any American have walked into conditions with people with whom we are at war, and you've been able to get them free. It just occurred to me, Attorney O'Neill and State Representative Myers and Attorney Sanat, just what a gargantuan task Reverend faced, and you've been so successful. What do you make of her release? What do you make of, there's several high-profile Americans who are still there, and it seems that the Wayland case is more complex, Reverend, because he holds 4 passports, for example, American, Canadian, Irish, and British citizenship, for example. He had to deal with a court martial. There's just a lot. There's a lot more to this case than the corporate media are saying. But what do you make of her release?
Number one. And I tell you that when living do not talk about that is for the war.
Hey, good morning. This is Chris.
Trump, Mr. Biden and Putin, and they'll communicate before. But I came back from Syria with Robert Woodman. Was really that for you. And then we'll talk God and say thank you. And that was different, and they did it, and this never stopped talking. So communication is the key to the kingdom, and I hope that when passes they use to communicate, they'll begin to talk to each other.
Communicate.
Lee says Bible about movement around the world for freedom. She was around the world. She had become a highly visible person. She was a superstar forever now.
Well, I certainly hope so. She has the skill set to do and be that. And her wife fought valiantly, brilliant young woman, to help get her free. We're so glad that their family that they've been reunited. Let me just go through our panel, starting with you, Attorney Terry O'Neill. The Griner imprisonment brought forth a lot. We talked about LGBTQ plus issues, but we really you had to look at this long line of WNBA players who are in Europe, who are out of the United States playing essentially a second season because of the pay gap. Attorney Terry O'Neill.
Yeah, the pay gap is really, really jaw-dropping, Santita. Just listen to this. On average, an NBA player, this is on average, earns $5.3 million a year, while a WNBA player on average is earning about $130,000 a year. I mean, just completely jaw dropping. And then when you think the really, really top player among the men, it's like over $40 million a year. But among the women playing basketball, it's like $230,000 a year. So huge, huge difference in pay. And people say, well, nobody watches the women's sports and the WNBA. Well, a lot of that is because the media doesn't cover women's sports. The WNBA players, some of them are just brilliant and amazing and fabulous to watch, but it's very difficult for people to catch them sometimes. And it's not just covering the games themselves, it's talking about the games. That doesn't happen. Like 95% of coverage is of men's sports, not women's sports. So it all really adds up. And then you find Brittany Griner in this situation. And as you said earlier, Santita, it is not unusual for especially athletes to use medical cannabis. So she was not, she had like traces of oil in empty vape pens, apparently is what they found her with. So yeah, the fact that she was in Russia
and wait a minute,
playing a sex.
Oh, and hold on. She was entering the country. So one would assume, I mean, one could extrapolate, should I say, from that she had been planning to obtain this cannabis oil once she got there, right? I mean,
I hadn't even heard that. I did not realize. I thought she was actually coming back. No, but I think what she had said at the time was, "Oh, I forgot I had those." They were there in her bag. She forgot she had them even, which I totally believe. Think about stuff that you carry onto an airplane sometimes. So, yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Attorney Anastasia Sanat, your take on this?
I actually have mixed emotions about it, and the reason why I have mixed emotions is probably the same thing that many Americans feel, which is you swapped the WNBA professional athlete for the merchant of debt. When you hear the crime that he has been convicted of, and you hear the crime that she was convicted of, they do not match. Obviously, there are other people that see maybe it was a swap for time. In essence, instead of Brittany spending 9 years in prison, and instead of him being released 7 or 8 years from now, let's swap time. But my mixed emotion is the fact that I'm really concerned with the fact that Russia is engaged in a war with Ukraine. The United States is obviously giving arms to Ukraine. And I'm wondering if the United Nations or our allies are keeping or preventing Russia from getting arms. And that is why Putin wanted him released. I mean, obviously, there are other reasons why Putin may want him released. In this essence, there are a number of allies that this merchant of debt has created and garnered over the years, in which they have money. And maybe Putin wants access to that money. But that is why I have such mixed emotions.
Well, let me ask you this. What about Paul Whelan, who has 4 passports and was dishonorably charged, was court-martialed? I'm only asking that because the corporate media are not talking about this complex background that he's got. I mean, and he was someone who visited Russia many, many times. In fact, he was there for a wedding when he was detained.
Yeah, Paul Whelan, U.S. citizenship, British, Irish, Canadian. That's a lot to have on one particular resume. It shouldn't be used against you. But the primary reason I believe that the United States is involved is because he is a former Marine. Now, he had been accused of spying in 2018. He's already spent, obviously, more than 2 years there in prison, and he received his 16-year sentence in 2020. I did not realize that the United States did not need to be the only country going after Paul Whelan. I'm disappointed that we weren't able to get 2-for-1 as well. But at the end of the day, I do believe Biden made the appropriate decision given his options. It's either you give us the merchant of death or you get nothing. And so he did what he needed to do. But I like I said, the mixed emotion is the fact that I really don't believe that he should be out in the world if he has such a title.
Well, sure. But the thing is, I think everything's very complex. Jonathan Pollard's been released, and no one has done more damage to our U.S. security state than that traitor. And yet he's been released. When you think, it's all very, very politicized, right? It's a very delicate dance. That's why, picking Reverend Jackson's brain is so. Before we come to you, State Representative Lakeisha Myers, Reverend, when you go into these situations, are these? What kind of information do you have? Or have you had?
More than their value to us, need to get them out. A, but B, I think it case Russia and the U.S. are for each other. Somewhat system, I thought it was that's really. It is said in the apple proper, but two elephants confront and fight. Who loses was at the grass. Ukraine is the gas, and Biden and Putin is fighting each other. And so, having the more protests became visible, that people came to Putin, somebody stick his eye, and we made the move to change a basketball player for an arms dealer. In one sense, that's a balance. On the other hand, we're glad they did it. But this really is a Putin-sided war. And Ukraine is the victim of this situation. Hasn't been in this.
Well, there are so many pieces with which we are not familiar, because one man's hero is another man's, terrorist. So there's just a lot I think that we do not know. And Lakeisha Myers, state representative from the great state of Wisconsin, also from Chicago, used to work for Congressman Danny Davis. What was your read? Because we've got Americans from all over the country who are being held in various places.
We have Americans that are being held in various countries, but I think that's it. The additional information is what we don't know, and that's the X factor. When I think of, back in history, the young man who went to Singapore and ended up being caned, and the United States had to intervene in that process. The additional layers of the story. I find it interesting that many people don't know about Waylon's 4 passports or some of the things that are with his past. Not to say that he should not be returned home, but I think that there most definitely was the political weight that came with having a Brittany Griner. Number one, with her being a Black woman. Number two, with her being a world-class athlete. And just time and place. I think with where the U.S.'s relations were with Russia, and then on the verge of war with Ukraine in the beginning of this, it brought all of those things to like a perfect storm of let's see what happens if. And I think when you deal with someone like Putin who wants to push every button to see, how far he can get with the United States, to be on the brink of nuclear war, you have to always think about that in the background as well. So I think she was a geopolitical pawn in this situation. I'm happy that she is back home. I want to also, say that I think her capture kind of unearthed the inequity that we all knew about if you really pay attention to sports. Mm-hmm. But also it puts some onus on what is happening now in the WNBA with the changes that they've made as far as their workplace culture. They increased salaries because Brittany was working basically a second job to make ends meet. And so they put different parameters in place where they're paying their players more. I know there were some restrictions that came about that I read about in the paper recently about asking their players to not sign contracts for overseas play. So those are some things that they had to make a real investment in to really put women's basketball, especially at the forefront. And I think that was also a catalyst for what happened with women's soccer.
Well, surely there are some silver linings here, but there is also a lot that we do not know. There's a lot that we do not know, but the path forward is to talk about the pay gap. The path forward is to talk about these uneven drug laws. So many Americans are still serving time in prison for the possession of cannabis and various products. So, Reverend,
In America.
right here in the United States, it's happening right now. So I mean, and it's not just black folks. I had a caller who called into my show on Friday, and bless his heart, white fellow. He said, "Look, I can tell you right now, I'm advocating to get these people out of prison right now in America." So let's talk about all of that on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Please put Rainbow Push under your Christmas tree. Please join us. Give us a contribution. 773 Freedom is our number, but go to rainbowpush.org. Back with more of Keep Hope Alive in just a few minutes.
Your opinion counts. 1-866.
Hello, Reverend. Okay. We're on Facebook Live now.
Okay.
But it's very interesting. Attorney O'Neill, Attorney Sanat, State Representative Myers, as I was doing some digging, as I am wont to do with the show. Well, I have to know some pieces. You just can't read an article. You have to dig down. When I read that Mr. Whalen had 4 passports, I said, this is a little bit more complex than they're telling us. No one's saying that someone, that's an indictable offense, but that's a little different. So there's just a lot of pieces here, because I heard a lot of people on the right and a lot of people, quite frankly, right and left, who were incredulous that a basketball player was allowed to go in this merchant of death, and that's our name for him. I don't know what they call him in Russia. Because we've got merchants of death that people around the world call some of our people. So, all of that, I'm like, there are just a lot of moving parts here that we just do not know. Reverend?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Joe, please, everybody talk.
Professional athlete.
I'm sorry, what you say, honey?
I said being an arms dealer is definitely not equivalent to being a professional.
That's right. Well, girl, we don't know what any of this stuff is. To be
But they argue that Brittany was a drug trafficker. Hello, this is Melanie. I don't see it. They were arguing.
Oh yeah, there's no question. There's just so much we don't know, because all these guys, when you get into that murky world, they have no borders. You have Americans, you have Russians, you have everybody of every conceivable background trafficking arms, and we're the biggest arms makers in the world. So, mic drop on that.
But the question is, how many of these WNBA players are honestly going to bring in the money to make the equivalency of the NBA players?
I think if they make the investment, think about Venus and Serena. Think about Martina Navratilova. I mean, in her era, she and Chrissy Everett were the biggest draws in tennis. It's possible if there's the intentionality. The NBA, they own half the WNBA anyway. They could do it. Oh. Oh my goodness. Love it, love it, love it. So glad that Brittany Griner is home. Welcome to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. Reverend Jackson, of course, is joining us by phone. We're talking with attorney Anastasia Sanat. Who is she? She is the president, a brilliant lawyer, president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association, the equally brilliant State Representative Lakeisha Myers. Well, she's from Chicago, but we have to share her with Wisconsin now. And of course, brilliant civil rights attorney and activist, the former national president of the National Organization of Women, attorney Terry O'Neill. We've got a lot to talk about today, Reverend Jackson, as we look at Brittany Griner. Her incarceration really brought forth this question. Why was she over there? Well, she and 70 other players go there routinely, go to Russia and throughout Europe, where basketball is very popular because she's able to make $1.5 million a season in Russia. She can't make that here in the United States. And, the profit sharing agreement in the WNBA is very different than the one that they have in the NBA. The NBA, the players get 50% of the revenue. In the WNBA, they get 20%. Now, one could say that the yield, the monies generated by the NBA, far outpace that of the WNBA. That's true. But there should be some intentionality about growing the league. We get very excited about women playing basketball during the Olympics. Should we not let that bleed over into the rest of the time, these other 4 years? So let's talk about this. Chris from Oak Park, what's on your mind today? Chris?
Good morning.
Hey, sweetie. How are you today?
Hello.
Hey, Chris. Can you hear us? Okay. Well, hold on. We're going to get Chris up in a hot second. Okay. I think I hear Chris. Great hearing your voice, Chris. What's your question or comment?
Good morning, Reverend Jackson. Much love. I wanted to comment on, I think it was a Russian plan. She's been going over there over a decade, making money for Russia with the team. And all of a sudden, when the United States assists in Ukraine with weapons, such a, situation, she's arrested. I think it was, we're trying to get leverage, to get that individual guy out and whatever. Because she's been going over there forever. And also, it just exposes the pay gap, as you said, with the L sports and sports. I'm just glad she's back. And also, she's the right wing that said their outrage was taken over. But Putin's supposed to be Trump's buddy. Trump's kissing his feet. How come he didn't get what brought back home in 2018 when he was still president?
Okay. You make that point, Reverend Jackson.
Proud, but she never a war. Perhaps Wayland with his full passports. He has a different kind of record. She was at the end of the bystander, so slipped off the street and left as a rock. I think that the intense pressure in America by those demonstrators, we politicizing it. On the one hand, that got Biden's attention. On the other hand, the fact that we made a political celebrity here gave gratification for pulling some over our heads to the direction.
Well, because Attorney Terry O'Neill, when this first happened, you didn't really hear a lot about it. And, Black women in particular started beating the drums really loudly. Like, hey, when are you all going to talk about Brittany? Because no one spoke about this initially. And it just eventually became a cause celeb, if you will. But we're also, Reverend, in the midst of, who's fooling who? America and Russia are at war right now. It's not just NATO. We are in a hostile space. How do you? Well, before I get to Attorney O'Neill, Reverend Jackson, how would you have even approached speaking to them? Because I remember when you got the 3 soldiers out of Kosovo. So many of my friends called me and they said, "What did your father say?" I said, "I don't know." They said, "No, no, 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 because we got a problem over there." What did he say?
I feel the interest of Melissa at that time. We see, and these weaker third world
Commissioner
countries
Ellis, please hold on.
are the difference in first place. And they, America, have fixed on them. And so, Putin sees the moment. I think I see the moment as well. We should have done it, and we will do it again. I would like, I told you this and said, put the interests are. Each country I went to found in poverty, where the no talk politics for them. And you don't talk, then you set yourself up or introduce yourself. Look right. They should talk at least one for the.
You know, Reverend, we're going to have to get you on a better line because you're going in and out again. Oh, no, 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 no. Just stay right there because people want to hear what you've got to say this morning because no one has more experience in getting Americans out of countries with whom we have hostilities, to put it, politely. We might be at war with them, but you're able to go in as a minister through the church, but as someone with portfolio, without portfolio, but with portfolio. You certainly, the presidents will meet with you and they, after you speak with them, release these prisoners. You have a tremendous history of that. Attorney, yes, Reverend?
To get Britain, I tried, and there was no White House for me to try. Some of the representatives personally embarrassing that.
Reverend, I'm sorry. Okay, Reverend, I need you to say that one more time, slowly this time.
It is as if when we bring a person back home to embarrass our government, we never attack our government. Somehow they should be the devil.
Well,
that they Putin is he's a big man. He hurt his own people. He didn't do all you. That's right. He's determined to go through.
You know what, Reverend, we're going to get you on a clearer line, But, before we just let's stay right there. We're going to work that out. Before I come to you, Attorney Terry O'Neill, Texas Harris County Commissioner. Rodney Ellis is joining us this morning. And we're first talking about Brittany Griner before we get to Georgia in the second hour. Your thoughts about her release? She is a Texan.
Washington, D.C., they gave him the Mandela Award at the African Union 20th anniversary gala. And Jonathan did a great job of representing him. And he took your younger sister, Jackie, up with him. And it was just outstanding. But, I couldn't help but think about Brittany Griner, think about Rev Jackson getting so many people out of incarceration situations all around the globe. He's clearly a pioneer in that because, as you said, he's respected all over the globe. And, in a lot of ways, I think that former Governor Bill Richardson took a page out of Reverend's book. Everybody saw how he had the ability to talk to Fidel Castro, to talk to Muammar Gaddafi, to talk to Assad, when no one else could do it. And, Brittany Griner's case helps us see that there really is no price too high to pay if we can get one of our own out. Most nations around the globe from time to time have to engage in those negotiations. It's always controversial. But look, I'm glad she got out. She is from Houston, went to Nimitz High School. That's where she was discovered, to really be a key woman playing basketball. She was such a pioneer, and we're excited for her to come back. A lot of the vitriol you're seeing, I think, is homophobia. It's because she happens to be female, young, Black, and gay, and that adds to it. I'm so proud of the family of some of the other hostages who have come out and said they understand. You ask for what you want in those negotiations, and then you take as much as you can get. And in no way does that distract from the Biden administration's ability to go and try and get other Americans who are detained back in this country. But I'm glad she's there. It's a great relocation program because she goes to San Antonio, because she got to reintegrate. I can only imagine the psychological trauma of assuming you'll never get to see your family and loved ones. In her case, her wife again. But so I assume we're going to have something major. Mayor Sylvester Turner, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who kept this issue of her case, Brittany Griner's case, on the front page of the newspapers. It's exciting. And I'm going to represent Jonathan and old Rev today over at the White House. They had one of those holiday parties. And I assume that there'll be a tremendous celebration over at the White House. A lot of buzz about the fact that Brittany Griner did get out.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Attorney Terry O'Neill, we are now talking about the pay gap, the inequities. How can we keep that conversation going, Attorney Terry O'Neill?
I think that one of the side effects of what happened to Brittany Griner is, in fact, that we've got this big conversation going. The Women's Basketball Association, the Players Association, has got some concessions going in their contract. They need a lot more. But just for example, only recently in the WNBA's union contract did they allow, they say they have 50-50 revenue sharing, right, between the league and the players. That's not really quite true right now. In the NBA, they have true 50-50 revenue sharing, all revenue for the league. Over in the Women's National Basketball Association, the revenue sharing is actually more like 20% for the players and 80% for the league, because the so-called 50-50 is what they call instrumental. Anyway, it's a lot of small print, but the point is they don't have parity with the male players. And we know that only because it's being covered, and it's only being covered because of Brittany Griner. So I think that these conversations need to keep happening, and I'm hopeful that they will keep happening, specifically because Brittany has been in the news so much about why she was in Russia to begin with.
Attorney Sanat, we're also looking at the drug laws, how uneven they are. People who are convicted of what Brittany was convicted of are in prison today. But then you can go out west and you can sell cannabis. But then you've got a lot of black entrepreneurs who are saying, wait, I can't get the license, but white people are able to jump in front of the line on me. What does this say about U.S. drug laws and the reforms that might need to happen?
Well, it's important that people understand that federally, it's illegal in order to sell drugs, right? It's illegal in order to possess cannabis. But statewide, which is a lower standard, there are states that allow it. For example, Illinois does allow these types of things, and there have been black people. I think J.B. Pritzker just did a presentation with one of the more recent holistic, is what they call it, dispensers, and he is a black person. But the problem with knowing how we do business in the United States and knowing how Russia does business is really a moral distinction. It's not necessarily a legal distinction in the sense that our laws reflect our morals. Their laws reflect their morals. We cannot say they are wrong for stating that even the little bit of cannabis oil that Brittany Griner had is illegal in their country. They don't like it. They don't want it. But then you have to think about the other prisoner swap that the president had done earlier with Trevor Reed. He also was a U.S. Marine. He also was arrested in Moscow Hotel in 2018. He was also held with charges of espionage. And the release of Konstantin Yoroshenko, who was not only a pilot, but he was a convicted drug smuggler. It begs to differ in the sense that is Putin really upholding the morals and values of his own people? It's like I said, the law is the law. If you go into a different country, you need to follow their law. If you come to the United States, you need to follow our law. If you break our laws, we're going to put you in jail. If you break someone else's laws, we're going to put you in jail. So the real issue is not necessarily how unequal our morals are, but the fact that a lot of Americans don't recognize the distinction of morals when we go overseas. And that is something that we as Americans need to respect more. We need to respect the fact that we're going to someone else's home base. And if you go to Thanksgiving dinner in someone's house and they tell you to take off their shoes, you need to take off your shoes. So in this situation, that's why I said I had mixed emotions. Brittany went somewhere that she's known for many years does not like this particular subject area, cannabis. Even if you have a doctor's note, even if you've been doing it for years, you already knew they didn't like it. So when the war in Russia began 2 weeks after her arrest, obviously they used her as a pawn. I believe Chris from Oak Park mentioned that. And that's a good point. They were using her as a political pawn because they thought they would get the support of international communities in order to take over Ukraine. What they did not expect was that it would be the opposite reaction in the sense that the United States was given $1 billion arms to Ukrainian citizens so that they would be able to fight off Russia. So now we have a situation where the merchant of death, an arms dealer, has been exchanged so that they can get these weapons illegally from other countries in order to fight the war in Ukraine. And that's my personal opinion.
Sure, but I think we're just doing a lot of trading back and forth because there's so many merchants of death on all sides who are traded back and forth. When I look at who's held, it's just, every imprisonment, every indictment, domestically and internationally, is a political act. You have a lot of political actors. For example, Henry Kissinger, is respected as he is. There are many places in the world he cannot go, President George W. Bush, because they're considered war criminals. I mean, it just depends upon where you are, right? And so at the end of the day, Reverend, I mean, it's just, yes, Reverend.
The woman, black and gay.
Yeah.
Those three right there.
Absolutely. And was she used? Sure. Does that happen? Yes. The three gentlemen you picked up out of Kosovo, were they political pawns? Yes. Did you know how to speak to with the president so that you could get them out? Yes. It's all of that, Reverend. But I think one of the things that you can talk to us about is how you're able to reach across the divide, in a moment where people see the ugly American, because America has been so powerful and we have been a little arrogant with the power, Reverend. And you come in from another tradition and in another way.
I would love to. I'm not sure you ever got it. If I could have, I'd got his ambassador on the cover here now.
What did you say, Reverend?
His ambassador over here because of risk on their lives. I talked with the ambassador. I felt with the Biden that would blow it up. Number two, he didn't do anything to please.
You know what, Reverend? We're getting every other word, but I know when we get on Facebook Live, people will be able to hear you. Stay right here, everybody. We're going to be talking about the Georgia race in just a few minutes. But if you come to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, you can hear Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, the former national president of the National Organization of Women, Attorney Terry Ellis, Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers, and Attorney Anastasia Sinat, president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association of Illinois, and of course, Reverend Jesse Jackson, as we talk about Brittany Griner, but we're also going to be talking about what happened in Georgia. Greg Palast is going to join us. It's going to be fantastic. More than 80%, Commissioner Ellis, more than 80% of his mail-in ballots, he lost because of voter suppression. Warnock did, Senator Warnock. So we got to talk about that too, because he won despite voter suppression. He said, we're having a mountain moment, but tomorrow we need to go back into the valley. We've got a lot of work to do. We do have a lot of work to do. So please put Rainbow Push under your Christmas tree. Please, please. Texas Harris County Commissioner Ellis, I've got less than 30 seconds. Can you tell people why we really need them on. We need to have push under their Christmas tree.
They're in the forefront for so many years, and even at this age, Reverend Jackson, and with health challenges, he's still out there fighting. We ought to help carry on his legacy, and we ought to stand up because he stood up for us over so many years. I'm gonna make a donation. I want to encourage all of you listeners. Write a check. We'll take anything. Cash, send it in. Send those electronic benefits in. It matters.
It really does. Back with more of Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson in just a few minutes.
Coming up, we'll have closing thoughts from Reverend Jesse Jackson right here on Keep Hope Alive.
Reverend?
No, I love it.
Okay, I want to hear you now.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, so you know what? We got to get you on a landline.
Okay.
We've got to do that.
Now, that sounds better, though, doesn't it, Santita?
It does. That's why I wanted him off. But when we take him through the board, because what is it?
It's not saying much now.
Yeah.
Keep on talking.
I don't know, Santita.
Well, just remember to.
Hi, Reverend Jackson. This is Anastasia. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I want you to know that I'm here with you. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations on your award that you just received.
I regret so much I couldn't make it. This week, the African leaders are coming to town. And even though I was a special envoy to Africa, know the country very well, I was not invited to for anything. I've not been really for 9 years. And I'm disappointed that we cannot get to the president's meeting on this coming Wednesday and Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday in New York, in Washington.
Well, Reverend, you remember what I told you some time ago. What did I say? Rejection can be your best protection. Keep on moving.
Reverend, this is Rodney. Jonathan did a great job. You should be so proud of all of your children. Santina, Jesse Jr., Jonathan, Little Jackie. Jonathan didn't use any notes. It was amazing. He was the last one to speak, and he did a great job. I don't know if they videoed it, but I'm gonna see it when he gets back. He's up at Harvard when they're doing the training for new members of Congress. But he did a great job.
Yeah.
Amen.
Reverend, you've done such a great job. You've done such a great job. And Santita, I understand the relationship that you have with your father is beautiful. I have a similar relationship. We keep our fathers on our toes. We make sure they are ready to go.
And it drives.
Anastasia, I heard, I think Jonathan told me that Rev is planning on coming over for Jonathan's swearing in. So we ought to all show up here so we can catch a glimpse of him. I think that's the 3rd. Is that right, Santita?
That's right.
Swearing in new members of Congress.
That's right.
Hey, I would be happy to be invited. I will attend anything, Santita.
Well,
if you all invite me, I'm part of the Jackson family. I will show up.
You could look. Come on to DC. The thing is, we can't get anyone into the Capitol because that's seniority. And
we got an after party. How about that?
Yeah. That's the shot.
Okay, I would only be able
to watch it. We watch it on TV, but I'm sure we're gonna plan something. Maybe at the Rainbow Push. I'm tell Rev we're gonna plan a fundraiser at the Rainbow Push headquarters in DC.
Well, we got to do something.
And everybody that's on the line, I want to invite you all to a reception that Hollow's going to be hosting because we have, for the first time in Chicago, the Dean of Loyola Law School, who is Haitian American.
Oh, fantastic!
So,
when is it?
Female dean. It's going to be on January 20th. So I want to make sure that all of you all show up because this is going to be history making.
Fantastic.
Who is elected, the second Black judge elected in Lake County, who's also of Haitian descent, John Joannem. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to move the pendulum forward, right? In order to make sure that we are represented in all aspects of the law. So I'm excited about this as well.
Well, that is fantastic.
Feel free to work the calendar. Mm-hmm.
Stand by.
15 seconds.
Reverend,
Yeah.
Reverend, we have less than a minute.
10 seconds.
Okay, so let me just get us out, okay?
5.
Okay.
4.
Is it
3,
5826?
2, 28.
28, okay. Hey, everybody, stay tuned for the second hour of Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Let's talk about what happened in Georgia, the Senate runoff. And in the meantime, please keep Rainbow Push under your Christmas tree. RainbowPush.org. Join us, give us a contribution, and join us every Saturday at 10 a.m. at 930 East 50th Street. We need volunteers at 773-FREEDOM. Call us. But in the meantime, stay tuned for more of Keep Hope Alive.
Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. For more information on upcoming shows and guests, please visit our website at www.keephopealiveradio.com.
Okay, Reverend?
Yes.
Okay, Daddy, let me hear you speak now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here we are.
Okay, I need you to over enunciate today, okay?
Okay, baby.
And just get the energy. Get that energy up.
Yes, ma'am.
Get that energy. Get that energy. Oh, it is so cold in here, Jeremy. I'm wearing 3 sweaters here. He doesn't care. If it was 20
if it
degrees,
was warm,
and he'd
then
be
you'd be sleepy.
No, I would not.
But you looking good on Facebook Live,
So you know what? I am miserable. Okay, that's what I am right now. Girl, it's cold.
And Representative Lakeisha Myers, just so wrong, it is so good to have you on the line as well. Absolutely. I can't wait to meet you.
We love Lakeisha Myers.
Yeah, my line sister is actually an elected official in Wisconsin. I pledged in Wisconsin. So
To speak
I'm
with
excited.
Reverend Jesse Live, call toll free 1-866-59. 1-866-594-4673.
Stand by.
And now, the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. We've been talking about Brittany Griner. Yay, she's home. Can't wait to hear from her, but certainly we're respectful of her re-entry process. And, you know, her wife has communicated to the world that they are just grateful for all of our prayers and all that we all tried to do to help get her free. And we just thank God that she and her wife and their family have been reunited. Everybody, let's talk about this other big story this week. Senator Raphael Warnock ran one more time and won once again. The margins, however, were not big margins. It was a win. We'll take it. But he won by just under 100,000 votes. What happened here? How is it that he lost more than 80% of his mail-in ballots? Voter suppression. It's a lot that we got to talk about. A lot that we've got to talk about here on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Texas Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, he said, look, we got a mountain moment, but we got to go into the valley and do some work. I know you're dealing with voter suppression in Texas. Of course, we've got Attorney Anastasia Sanat, president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association of Illinois. We've got Wisconsin State Representative Lakeisha Myers. You dealing with voter suppression in Wisconsin? Boy, we can just keep on calling the roll. And of course, the former national president of the National Organization of Women, Attorney Terry O'Neill. And we've got we've got John Nichols, who's on the Nation cruise. What? And Attorney Erin Connolly. And of course, Greg Palast, producer of the movie Vigilante. Oh boy, we cannot wait to hear from everybody here. We're going to grab John Nichols. You know what, John Nichols? We've got Reverend Jesse Jackson here with us. But let me grab you because I know that John is going to, he's on this cruise. Well, Reverend, when we get on the other side, we're going to take John for a couple of minutes and we're going to have to let him go.
I will.
But Reverend, what are your thoughts? Reverend?
Okay, well, I'll let him know.
Yes, Reverend.
Well, we swimming blank. This has been a great week for Brown and one, count your blessings. Don't wrap them, man. We're winning every.
Okay, everybody, let's talk. 866-594-HOPE. 866-594-4673. Back in just a few minutes.
Your opinion counts. 1-866-59.
John said he can't do it.
Okay, that's fine.
He's in the event.
No worries. Okay, Reverend.
Yes.
Okay, we're talking with everybody from what is it? From Facebook Live. You can talk to them now.
Okay. Sometimes we become so cynical. We're swimming in blessings, drowning in complaints. This has been a great week for us. The battle in Georgia was a big deal. Several 100,000 white people were born up too. So we'll move stereotypes about Georgia. Several 100,000 white people. Georgia, not 50 black and white.
Daddy.
Yes.
Okay, you're gonna have to speak more clearly than that.
Okay. Several 100,000 white people were born up as well.
Dad.
In Georgia.
Dad.
Yes.
Slow down.
Yes.
Slow down.
Okay.
And over enunciate. Now start again.
Several hundred white people, several 100,000 white people voted for Warnock as well. It's a big deal for Georgia. I didn't think that it's Fulton County based whites would just vote for Trump. You know how dangerous he is. This is Dr. King versus Trump battle, really. Dr. King versus Trump on the line.
But Reverend, hold on. It's not just Trump. Hold on. Wait. You know, my father and I do this all the time. Attorney Sanat and Attorney Terry O'Neill and Commissioner Ellis and State Representative Myers and Attorney Connolly and Greg Palast. Liz Cheney voted with Trump 90% of the time. Everybody continues to call his name, and I'm surprised that you do, Reverend. But the fact is, all these people, wait one moment, Reverend, all these people who are anti-Trumpers, they vote with him 90+% of the time. The corporate media are lying. If you go to Ballotpedia, almost 90% of Trump, the people Trump ran in 2022 won. There's much more to this. I mean, and Liz Cheney to be talking about stealing an election after what her father and Bush did? Are you serious right now? And they took it all the way to the Supreme Court. They're as much responsible for what we're dealing with now as anybody.
I'm super serious.
I am too.
It goes water on through. But Santita, the Trumpism he symbolizes how much you can do and get away with. I mean, we might have a McMahon march on Washington. You think we take the Capitol, we've been shot down like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know what? But you know, these folks are seditious by nature. I mean, what you dealt with, what you walked into in the American South, what you lived with through the 50s, 60s, 70s, etc. And you were the most threatened American presidential candidate in history until Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And there was a wonderful book. I'm going to find it because I have it somewhere in my collection, where I think it was Senator Alan Simpson and another American senator. They were talking to you. You were about to go speak on the Capitol. You were running for president. And they said, you know, very calmly, they related this story to a journalist. They said, while we're talking to Reverend, they're putting this bulletproof vest on him and they're fastening it on. Then they put a bulletproof coat on him. It took two people to lift the coat because the coat was so heavy because he's a big guy. And it occurred to me, oh my goodness, this man's running for president, but he needs to wear a bulletproof vest and coat. And as your Secret Service agents told me, well, if they aim for the head, there's nothing we can do. Come on. Americans are seditious by nature, unfortunately. And too ready to pick up a gun and overthrow. That's what we do.
Well, I'm not sure that you deal with the impact of Trump representing now in our time a real threat. Rather,
okay.
He's a dominant force in American politics, and he plans to run again. But the fact that he has been hurt the law so much.
Reverend, hold on, but you sound great right now. So y'all, this is what my father and I do this all the time, but he gives me the space. He encouraged me to be to have my own thoughts. Okay, hey everybody, welcome back to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. Let's talk about Georgia. What a victory, what a victory, what a victory. And we were on pins and needles. Some people have asked the question, why was it so close? Well, look, a win is a win. And then Kirsten Sinema turned around, turned to Aaron Connolly and said, I'm not going to be a Democrat. I'm going to be an independent. Okay, whatever all of that meant. But we're going to take the victory. Turn that up, Jeremy. Hey, that's right. I'm so glad. The victory is mine. Oh boy, you know what? Let me start with you, Reverend Jackson, and then we're going to go around this wonderful panel. Greg Palast, of course, is joining us, and of course, he has been with Commissioner Rodney Ellis, and we've all been together. Attorney Terry O'Neill and Attorney Anastasia Snott, State Representative Lakeisha Myers. We have been talking, Attorney Aaron Connolly, about this race, and we have been pulling. Greg Palast, he has just done so much of this work, this movie vigilante that Jamie Foxx allowed us to see without cost for the past week and some change has really been prophetic. He has been dogged, Greg Palast has, in his pursuit of what voter suppression meant and what it would do in Georgia. And we just thank you for your work. Reverend Jackson, voter suppression was as big a story as the victory. That was something that as Senator Warnock said, we're having a mountain moment, but we've got to go back into the valley and deal with voter suppression. You should not have to wait 2.5, 3, 4 hours, et cetera, in order to vote. Reverend Jackson?
You got the right to vote in 1965. Two unfortunate years have been denied it. Members further protect the right to vote. We lost the Shelby. Protect the right to vote. Right. The state has a more freedom in the election. Now the right to vote. So you want the person.
Reverend, we're getting you every other word. We're gonna get you into the right place. But let me go right to you, Greg Palast. Greg Palast, what happened on Tuesday?
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me. Wait, I'm in an elevator. Hang on one second.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Let me go to you, Commissioner Rodney Ellis. On Tuesday, because voter suppression is a real issue down in Texas, what did we see? You went to Georgia.
Georgia's voter suppression laws did some of what they were intended to do. They kept those mail-in ballots from being counted. But people who showed up and they showed out, despite those barriers, hey, it was akin to having guess how many bubbles would come from a bar of soap or how many chili peas were in a jar. They just worked around it. But here's the challenge, that's not the thing. You had a great candidate. You had unprecedented financial resources. You had an international profile on Reverend Warnock. But there's so many other races, down ballot, other races involving somebody. But for governor, United States Senator, Stacey Abrams, as an example, where you just may not have the wherewithal to get around those kind of suppression laws. So that's the challenge. There were people who made it, slightly more less conservative whites would get elected during the bad old days of Jim Crow. A few could appeal, some cosmetic stuff to us, but that's just not sustainable. That's why it's so important to get federal voting rights protection passed again. By the way, how can we hold our heads up around the globe and go say somebody's being held in Russia, as an example, and we're a democracy? And then you look at what we're doing in terms of suppressing the vote right here in Georgia, in Wisconsin, in Texas. That's the challenge. And Senator Sinema making her switch, who knows what that means? There's a lot at stake in the elections coming up in the next cycle, the presidential cycle. We got to try to get the House back with sensible people. Most of them will be D's, but even some of ours who will vote based on integrity and get additional votes in the Senate. So either you can get rid of that filibuster rule or have enough votes to work around it. My point is, this is not sustainable. There are too many down ballot races, not just at the top of the ballot, people who handle elections. It's embarrassing. It's ridiculous, and it's not right.
Greg Palast. Okay, Reverend Jackson. I'm sorry, Greg. Before we go to you, Reverend Jackson.
Moment, I think the breakdown is important. 100,000 in Georgia. That's a big deal. That whites have begun to become more mature. When that boy played football, I heard him play football against Georgia Tech. The thing he had going about that, he was of the goals to reference fans, parents. That's not true in the rest of life of people, particularly black people, and poor people. So I think that the whites who voted for him, they also had a racial state. More 500 blacks were lynched in Georgia than they let you vote. Even while I'm on that Wall Street, Georgia, getting massages.
Well, Reverend, hold on, because Attorney Terry O'Neill, the first thing you asked me was, I wonder how many white women voted for Herschel Walker? How many? What's the percentage? What's the breakdown? Attorney O'Neill.
Yeah, I really do love, Reverend, I really do love your take on it, that the number of white people, and I'm going to focus on white women, who voted for Reverend Warnock. I mean, I guess in Georgia, that's a good thing, but listen to these numbers. First of all, 68% of white women voted for Herschel Walker. Okay, 68%. Only 30% voted for Reverend Warnock. Compare that with black women, 93% voted for Reverend Warnock, and Latinas, 55% voted for Reverend Warnock. So you have 55% Latinas, 93% black women, and only 30% white women voted for Reverend Warnock. To me, as a white woman, that's distressing. But I think the other piece that's really important here is that white women and white men voted disproportionately in Georgia. In other words, voter suppression worked. Probably didn't work, clearly did not work as well as the Republicans wanted it to work and needed it to work. But, let me see, what is it? The white turnout, white people were 62% of voters. They're only 57% of Georgians. Black people are 32% of Georgians, but they only represented 28% of voters who turned out. That's voter suppression right there. And it's because of that voter suppression that the white women's vote was disproportionately, it gave them disproportionate power. And it's very distressing to me that so many of them went with Herschel Walker instead of Reverend Warnock.
Greg Palast, what did we see? Because you came up with Rodney Ellis, Commissioner Ellis, the day before the election, came out with some very distressing news about mail-in ballots, for example.
Terrible, absolutely. By the way, the film Vigilante will be available today. Today's the last day that Jamie Foxx has arranged for it to be free and available at vigilantemovie.com. It's Vigilante, Georgia's vote suppression hitman. And the hit was pretty effective because we did have we have to look at the cold fact that despite the press release put out by the Georgia Secretary of State, oh my God, there's no vote suppression because we had record turnout. And I hear the term record turnout. It was in the New York Times ran a story that said that Georgia runoff proves that that it backfired and it increased turnout. Now understand, most of my fellow journalists went into journalism because they flunked math. I was a professor of statistics at Indiana University, and I went to your dad's school, University of Chicago. So unfortunately, I am poisoned with numbers and facts. And here's the really ugly number. In the runoff in 2 years ago, January 2021, we had a turnout of 4.5 million voters in the Warnock-Loeffler race. It plummeted by 1 million votes to 3.5 million voters. Anyone who says that that's a record turnout, well, yeah, you could say it was a record plunge in turnout. They're not, it's insane that they're talking about this record turnout. So they're using a press release from the Republican henchman of Brian Kemp, Brad Raffensperger, his Secretary of State, and repeating it as gospel. It's just propaganda. It's a press release, and that's all that's being repeated. And so let me go, how did this happen? How did you have this massive drop-off of 1 million in votes? And by the way, in Fulton County alone, which is the main county of Atlanta, there are 4 Atlanta counties, but the big one is Fulton. Reverend Senator Warnock's vote fell by 74,000. Now, are you telling me this is a county that is substantially African-American and certainly progressive young people, LGBTQ community, etc.? Are you telling me people didn't like Reverend Warnock anymore? Are you telling me that African Americans and young people in Atlanta didn't think this race was as important as it was 2 years ago? That's absolute nonsense. They just made it impossible for many people to vote. And let me include my daughter, a student who was not there because you have almost 100,000 film students. It's a big film center. And they were out for vacation. They could not get their absentee ballot because the crushing of the runoff from 60 days to just 28 days meant it was nearly impossible for the counties to print, get out, mail the ballots, bring them back in time and count them. So you had, for example, there are a couple of statistics that they use, as people do say, there's the truth, there's lies, and there's statistics. That's the real bad lie. And one of the statistics they use that Brad Raffensperger says again and again, repeated in the New York Times, repeated in the Wall Street Journal, is that there was record voting during early voting, a record days of voting. Well, guess what? In the general election, because they made mail-in voting difficult, there was an 83% drop in mail-in voting. And that's not small because the majority of people in Atlanta did early voting. This time in the runoff, it was so close and so difficult to vote by mail that there was a 90% drop off. 9 out of 10 mail-in ballots kind of disappeared. So people couldn't get their mail-in ballots. So of course they had to wait in line. They had to wait in line in the in-person voting. So they go, oh, look at that record. Do you remember? I mean, how does long lines become evidence that there's no Jim Crow? That's evidence of Jim Crow. So you have people who couldn't mail in their ballots, so they had to wait in line, and some people couldn't get their ballots and mail it in. And so in this massive plummet. Also, they said, oh, look, there's a record turnout for a single day and this is the piece that no newspaper, and I mean no newspaper, reported, that there's a little asterisk. It wasn't a record in-person voting because in-person includes mail-in. It said, that mail-in includes mail ballots. They just said in-person voting, the people who physically voted. Well, of course, they cut the number of early voting days from 17 to 7. Well, if you cut the number of voting days by 2/3, then by definition, if people have to go wait in line, you're going to cut the number of days. You're going to increase the number of people on any given day. So they use vote suppression and say, oh, look, there's a record turnout. No. If you have 2 lines going to a cash register, and then you say we're closing a cash register, everyone has to get in one line, it's going to be a longer line. That's not evidence that things are better. It's the evidence that things are worse. So you had a million, I want to repeat this, a million vote drop off from 2 years ago. That is stone cold evidence of vote suppression because it wasn't everywhere. And this is very important. We went from if you got to mail in your ballot in a very short time and get it counted, you have to go to a drop box. Because as Barbara Arnwine, and I hope that you can get Barbara back on the program whenever possible. She was nearly in tears about the situation. So you had 107 drop boxes in the Atlanta area 2 years ago. By state law, SB 202, Jim Crow 2.2, Brian Kemp's and Brad Raffensperger's Secretary of State vote suppression law. By law, they cut the number of drop boxes in the 4 Atlanta counties from 107 to 25 maximum. And the way they wrote the law was really cute. It would have never passed under the old Voting Rights Act under Section 5. So what they said was, counties with more than 100,000 voters, active voters, can only have 1 box per 100,000 voters. 1 box for 100,000 active voters. I mean, people who vote all the time. Now, think about that. I mean, so it makes voting by mail nearly impossible because you have to use that drop box because unlike other states, like where I live in California, and most states, if you get in your mail-in ballot where it's postmarked by Election Day, it counts. Georgia, if it's not received on Election Day, it doesn't count. So you have to use the drop boxes. They removed them. Not only did they cut the number of drop boxes in Atlanta by 77%, it's like they ripped them up and took them downstate because the law also increased the number of drop boxes in the Republican counties. The decrease was limited only and solely to Atlanta, and the increase was imposed on Republican counties that didn't have drop boxes. They were required to add them to make it easier for white Republican voters. I mean, and I have to say, Barbara Arnwine.
Well, you know what? Well, and we absolutely wanted Barbara Arnwine, but let me just say this: Barbara Arnwine today is having a beautiful day. Her son Justin is getting married. That's the only reason she was not with us. That's the reason that she was not with us today. But I hear someone. Oh no! I didn't think that you were. I just wanted to let you know because she and Attorney Darrell Jones were down there working, but so many people were. But I heard someone speaking in the background before we bring on Melanie Campbell, who has helped to lead Black women there. She, of course, is the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and she's the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. And we've got Attorney Erin Connolly. Melanie Campbell, when you hear these numbers, you heard Senator Warnock say, hey, we've got a mountain moment, but we've got to go back in the valley. We've got a lot of work to do. You shouldn't have had to wait. You shouldn't have had to go through this to vote. 2 minutes belong to you.
Good morning. And I was listening to her sister. She's dead on about the fact that the opposite is true, that we shouldn't, about the long lines, all of that. That says we need voting rights reform, not the opposite. And so a lot of games were played with it. Now we all work hard to pull out that vote in spite of, but it has nothing to do with the reality that the SB 202 should never have been passed. And my concern, quite honestly, Tita and Rev. Jackson, is that they're going to come back and look at again, which is what has happened over the last really 20 years, looking at in many places, especially since Shelby versus Holder since 2013, with these voter suppression laws. Look at who voted, how they voted, and to change the rules again, because in Georgia, you still have a one-party rule on the state level. So we're going to have to continue to fight for voting rights reform, and in between all of that, yes, we're gonna have to just find a way and make a way to work around it. But I'm suspecting there are going to be more voter suppression laws passed in Georgia in the next state legislation session.
I mean, is there any way around any of this, Commissioner Ellis? I mean, aside from outvoting, I mean, it's just such an unfair burden. And it should be illegal. But is it? Commissioner Ellis, I got a minute for you.
Go. That's why best hope is federal election. Just think of the logic of saying that you can have more drop-off places in places where you have fewer people to drop the ballots off. I mean, it's clearly designed to do what it did to a great extent. It suppressed the vote. So I'm hoping that whatever we can convince Manchin and Sinema to live with, and a few reasons for Republicans, we do it to have some limited protections until we can get good thinking people in Congress and the House and the Senate to give us federal protection, or the courts to wait to do what they ought to do.
We shouldn't have to go through this, everybody. Melanie Campbell, we're so glad that you're with us today, the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable, and of course, Attorney Erin Connolly. You've got to explain Kyrsten Sinema to us. I knew I'd give her to you. I love you, my sister. You've worked with her, and you worked with her when she was a progressive. I'm like, what is she doing? We got 51-49, and then she said, I'm not a Democrat. I'm like, what? Back with more Keep Hope Alive in just a few minutes. Please push Rainbow Push under your Christmas tree. Go to rainbowpush.org. We need your support. We need your support. And call us at 773-FREEDOM. And then meet us at 930 East 50th Street throughout the week. We need volunteers. We are, of course, still giving food away because people need it. Stay right here for more of Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Back in a minute.
Your opinion counts. 1-866-594-HOPE. That's
In Atlanta,
1-866-594-HOPE.
interviewed Congresswoman Elanco in Johnson's class out of Dallas, and he's just doing a great job. I know I got to sign off. I got breakfast with a couple of these ambassadors here at DC, and I see them across the room waving to me.
Well, you could, but you can say something, Reverend Jackson.
Right.
Yes, sir, Reverend. I love you.
When the broadcast is over, I'm trying to get done this week. Rodney, I need to see you talk today, okay?
Okay, I'll call you back later on today.
I think also we are too successful not to be complaining about stuff. I think that the voter suppression is real. Mm-hmm. What makes big free is that in spite of that, we're on in the house. In spite of all the overt racial overshoot, in spite of all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And the fact that this person was so unqualified. We just came in terms of vote, not just, we didn't say home, came out because Trump and what? Central, the political administration. I mean, people ready to vote, didn't they vote for?
Sure, Reverend. I mean, I'm not disputing that. I'm just simply pivoting off of what the senator said.
Yeah.
Because he wanted us to, as people were celebrating, reveling in that moment, he did say we've got to look at voter suppression because you see how much he lost his mail-in ballots. You celebrate the win, but I think that I'm glad that he seized that moment, in that moment of victory, to tell people, hey, voter suppression is real. We saw it. Because what you say?
Was that
Greg Palast?
We had. I'm actually looking at some of those numbers of denial. We had. I'm trying to look just in. I have to look through the website here. We had about of actual votes cast and rejected about 1.5%. I mean, it was substantial because they have the exact match.
Reverend, hold on. Reverend, let Reverend ask you that question on air, and then you go right to it. I've got to bring on Erin Connolly too. Hold on, please. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson, asking you, morning stars, all the people, please put Rainbow Push under your Christmas tree. We absolutely need you. We need you today as we seek to serve people. 773 Freedom is our number throughout the week. And of course, at Rainbow Push, please meet us at 930 East 50th Street. We are working with our young people, with our STEM program, and with our computer lab. We are doing everything we can to be of service to people, and of course, still giving food away throughout the Christmas holidays on this Founders Month. Hope that you'll join me on my show on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk on the Santita Jackson Show from 6 to 8 Central Standard Time. And let's get right to it. Reverend Jackson, you had a question for Greg Palast. You want to know how many votes had been purged or challenged?
We did have a massive rejection of votes as usual in Georgia because they have something called exact match. So if you signed, if you registered as Jesse L. Jackson and your ID says Jesse Jackson, or you signed an absentee ballot, Jesse Lewis Jackson, your ballot would be invalidated because Georgia has this horrendous system called exact match. And it's very cute because they know that a lot of voter IDs for Hispanics, for example, have hyphens, accents, and with that little squiggle over the N, the Enye mark. And the driver's license don't always reflect it. So you have all these Hispanic voters whose ballots are disqualified, and rarely do they know about it. I did hear Barbara Arnwine talking about one person whose ballot she was, not Barbara Arnwine, but the Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, just newly elected from Texas, who came in because she's deeply worried that all these tricks used in Georgia immediately end up used in Texas. And she was on the phone calling hundreds and hundreds of voters saying, please, you have to now go into your office, county office, secure, that means correct your ballot because they're challenging your signature. And this man's signature was challenged, and so was his daughter's ballot because she's disabled. And so her signature is often very difficult. It often just doesn't match. They say, oh, the signature doesn't match. This is a game. So Republicans are going through the ballots and saying, no, 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 no.
And of course, you talked about this in 2016, but it has continued. I mean, that's why Chris Kobach, that is continued.
Pass the smell test if we still had Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, because it so clearly attacks disabled voters, so clearly, especially Black disabled voters who don't have a lot of helpers with them always. It affects, this is Barbara Arnwine's point, it affects Black elderly. And here was the great tragedy. Barbara had to actually take disabled, elderly Black folk to the polls because they were not sent their absentee ballots. And it was tragic because most people didn't know that under SB 202, a lot of disabled people, especially poor disabled people, didn't know that they wouldn't get their ballots, absentee ballots automatically, which they used to do. The state never notified people, you have to ask for your ballot every single time now, which wasn't true before. This is why you have a 90% drop in absentee ballots. And by the way, it's not by accident that they virtually eliminated absentee ballots, because 2 years ago, Reverend Warnock, Senator Reverend, won the absentee mail-in ballots by more than 2 to 1. His entire victory margin last time was 100,000 like this time. but he won the absentee ballots by 400,000 votes. So as soon as they saw that, the only reason he won office 2 years ago were those absentee ballot votes. So they said, okay, we'll eliminate absentee ballot votes. But who were those absentee ballots? I mean, Barbara's going into these nursing homes in Atlanta, helping people. Imagine they have to use a Columbia law professor to help them do affidavits to get a ballot and get it counted. And then because of the long, and only, are you ready for this? Every single voting station in Atlanta was more than 2 hours wait. They don't calculate more than that. Some were 4 hours, but at least 2 hours in every single Atlanta early voting station. Outside of Atlanta, in the Republican counties, it was averaging 10-minute wait, no more than 30 minutes.
You know what? Let me let the panel jump in on this. Melanie Campbell, before I get to you, Attorney Aaron Connolly, your response to that. Because it's, as we celebrate this victory, and Reverend is right, I think we need to embrace it. At the same time, we've been given the charge by Senator Warnock. It's like, hey, there's something foul here. I smell a rat. Melanie Campbell.
Thank you, Sister Sandy. Yes, Reverend Warnock in his speech, I call it a sermon.
Yes.
Victory, and also pointing out the realities of what we're up against in Georgia and many other places for that matter, which is why we need the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed in Congress, and that we need to push for it to happen in this late left. And there's a few days left. They just passed marriage equality. They can pass the Voting Rights Restoration Act. Because we're going to be faced with this going into 2024. The people like current governor of Georgia and the current Secretary of State of Georgia, many people, because they were able to put back against Trump, don't realize this, that they're still just as bad as they were when it comes to vote suppression. And the lies they told, because you have to remember, Kemp actually, and correct me, I think it was Greg Fowler talking, that filed a lawsuit. He tried to stop any opportunity for, after the 2020 election, right? Absentee vote, mail-in voting, tried to stop. I know we mentioned that in this particular race, all the things that they did are continuously studying how Black and brown people, young people vote, and how they're setting up for that 2024 election, so that Republicans will have, and I'm nonpartisan, but just fact, have an advantage. We're unfortunately going to have my sisters like I work with on the ground, who my affiliate leader is Helen Butler with the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, Deborah Scott with Georgia Stand Up, and so many other organizations, Black Voters Matter, and so many other groups, Blue Georgia Project. Spent a lot of time, and Helen drives the voter protection work in Georgia. And we work very closely, had to spend so much time doing just what he talked about, curing ballots, quote unquote, calling people, taking people to the polls because they didn't, and helping them to navigate the situation, to voter protection, election protection, other work. All of that makes that's gonna make less people vote. And when you see the report and he ran down those numbers, it tells us we have a problem. But perception is, oh my God, it was just going to turn out. There's no need to do anything. There is no voter suppression.
And that is simply untrue. Attorney Aaron Connolly, I mean, you see this, and then we turn around, and Kirsten Sinema, you spent a lot of time out in Arizona. She becomes just, it's like we couldn't even relish the victory long enough before we had this bomb dropped on us on, what was it, Friday? That she is now an independent. What does this mean? And will this thwart a primary challenge to her that many people foresee?
morning to this amazing panel, and thank you to everyone for their comments on voter suppression. I think it's really important to always mention our disabled community. So thank you, Greg Pallas, for talking about how that population is disproportionately affected by these restrictions on absentee and mail-in voting. And Kirsten Cinema, my goodness gracious. Early Friday morning, we woke up to that news and a glossy campaign-style video announcing her move to be an independent. Now, let's clarify some things. There is no independent party registered in the state of Arizona. So technically what she's doing is she's running as an unaffiliated voter. Now, she has some big challenges doing this, right? Even to get on the ballot as an unaffiliated candidate, she's going to have to get upwards of 40,000 signatures. She has no democratic apparatus or organizers to pull this off. So this will be paid canvassers from her corporate hedge fund buddies and pharma buddies who do not know the state, no democratic or progressive leaning organizers that worked on her campaign and helped her win will be participating. And her polling numbers among Democrats are absolutely abysmal. And that is really the reason she did this. So she has, by some polls, a 3% favorability among Democrats, where Mark Kelly has 58%. When we see her go up against a potential candidate like Congressman Greg Stanton, who holds her old congressional seat, her approval rate is 17%. So she saw these numbers and said, I need to stay relevant. And this was planned way before Georgia. The tackiness of announcing it the same week is very on brand for her. Let me just say that. And what she's been going around saying to folks in Arizona, organizers that have supported her, people who've become personal friends that she banks on for donations and support, have even gone to her and said, what can I say to push back on people that are angry with you? And her response, I've heard this anecdotally from many people, seen the same confirmation on Twitter, that she literally tells people to F off. She does not care what they think of her. She cares about herself and enriching her own personal wealth and power. And I would say that she is very unlikely to run at all and is looking for an off-ramp in some speaking engagements, ingratiating herself to the Republican Party, and this false notion that she's this grand independent who wants bipartisanship is nonsense, because she's not even talking to Arizona voters. She doesn't hold town halls. She doesn't answer questions. She's not accessible. Anyone that cares about bipartisanship would speak to everyone, and she's speaking to no one.
You know, what a tangled web we weave, Attorney Terry O'Neill. I got about a minute. I want to give everyone a chance to say a little something. We have to keep pushing. We have to look at this voter suppression. It's a very real thing. We also have to look at these defections. And Reverend, were you about to say something?
One thing I advocate with automatic voter, all Americans, automatic. You should come with the American package. You should have to pay taxes to vote. Automatic for all adults, 18 years old. That's gonna fuck up over a bit.
Automatic voter registration, you're saying every adult should be automatically registered to vote, Attorney Terry O'Neill. All these barriers that have been put between us and the vote, they've existed since before the founding of the Republic. Attorney Terry O'Neill, I have a minute for you.
Well, yes, these voter restrictions have existed, especially after the Civil War, when white people were determined that Black people shouldn't be able to vote. To be clear, and I live out here in Oregon. It's all vote by mail. That's not perfect. A lot of people are housing insecure, and when you are housing insecure, voting by mail, sometimes your ballot can't find you. So it's not perfect, but it is much better than what you have in a state like Georgia. Automatic registration also in place in a state like Oregon, like Washington State, like California. We need to have all of those things. And this should be a matter of an absolute basic right in any democracy. You know, Georgia can't really hold itself out as a democracy when it has these vicious voter suppression laws in place. Tennessee, not a democracy. Louisiana, not a democracy when they are suppressing the vote the way that they do. So we have a lot of work to do. And the fact that our side has been able to overcome vicious voter suppression doesn't mean voter suppression wasn't there. I mean, Melanie Campbell is absolutely right, and Greg Powell. And I'm so glad you all are putting that out there because voter suppression is very real, it's very damaging, and it's completely illegitimate.
Attorney Sanat, got about 30 seconds. Well, just inside of a minute. Give it to me. Your thoughts.
Kirsten changing parties from the Democratic Party to the Independent Party doesn't necessarily help her in the long run. I believe that she has bucked the system of Democratic people for a long time. She only voted 65% of the time with the Democratic Party, and those who intend to remain in the Democratic caucus. She has been I guess you can say, a thorn, right, in the side of the Democratic Party. So Raphael Warnock winning his Senate seat has been helpful, but her leaving the Independent Party won't help her in the long run because when her re-election comes about, I don't believe that the Arizona people will re-elect her. Yeah, I believe that, I think it was Attorney O'Neill that mentioned she doesn't even talk to the people. And if she doesn't even talk to the people and she's not even communicating with the people that are voters, then how is she going to really know what it is that the voters need? And as to the point, I believe that Mr. Pallas had said about voter suppression. I just wanted to make a point about this. My main concern in Georgia is the voter ideology. I am disappointed with the laws that exist in Georgia, and I'm disappointed that Stacey Abrams did not become governor. But at the end of the day, why are these people voting for Herschel Walker to begin with? Why would 1 million plus people vote for a man who's observably stupid? Right? I don't mean to say words that are inappropriate, but I take it from Dave Chappelle when he did his Saturday Night Live special, and he explained in as clear language as possible how Herschel Walker obviously was put up by the Republican Party based on the fact that he was a black man, not based on his intelligence, not based on what he can actually do for the people. He was literally just put up for race politics. And I think that we need to consider as Americans what's really important. Is it the laws that support suppression in the sense that we can't go to the regular mail and vote in that way?
Yeah.
Or is it the people, the parties that are selecting ignorant people to represent us?
Well, you know what? Many people always felt I gotta cut out to a hard break. People felt this was a naked power play, and many Republicans were publicly saying that. Look, I don't care who or what he is. I need the seat. That's what it was about for so many people, and we have to understand that that is also an element in politics. You have a lot of unconvicted felons sitting in office right now. I told you all of these arrests, indictments, and whatnot. They are political acts. Come on. Get some closing thoughts from you on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Please put Rainbow Push under your Christmas tree. Go to rainbowpush.org. Please, we need your support. Support us as we seek to support you. Call us at 773-FREEDOM throughout the week. Back with more closing thoughts on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson in just a few minutes. Okay, everybody, you can talk now. We're on Facebook Live. And Greg, let people know how they can see your movie without cost for now.
For today through tonight, you can see Vigilante, Georgia's vote suppression hitman, by going to vigilantemovie.com. And if you know, or just go to gregpalace.com and we'll click you through. No cost. It tells you two things. We've learned two things. vote suppression is alive and well in Georgia, despite what the media says, despite what the New York Times and Wall Street Journal have said that there's no vote suppression. It's there. But the second thing is the Reverend is absolutely correct. We can overcome it. We shall overcome. And as I say, you know, as the good Dr. King said, he didn't say we will overcome if we don't have to wait in line, or we will overcome if it's not raining.
True.
He said we shall overcome in whatever it takes. And when I saw Barbara Arnwine's work at the nursing homes, and especially with African American disabled people, and when I saw the Major Gamaliel Turner, whose vote was challenged by the Republican Party because he was assigned as a soldier to California. They said he's not a Georgian. He got his vote, but you know, his wife never got her vote, so she flew to Georgia to vote. And that's a heck of a poll tax, as he said. But we shall overcome, and we did, and that's what's important. So we have to continue the fight, and the fight's going to be a tough one, especially because the Wall Street Journal's already endorsed Brian Kemp, vote suppressor in chief. He's the vote suppression hitman, and the New York Times virtually endorsed him by saying he's the best candidate out there. That's dangerous because they're covering up the fact that he is the vote suppression hitman. So you got to see the film if you want to know who they've picked for your next president. Vigilante, Georgia's vote suppression hitman. That's Brian Kemp. Just go to vigilantemovie.com. Thank you for the platform.
Well, you know, we have a couple of minutes, Reverend, before we come back up.
Well, one, I want to talk on the phone, comments with each of you. We're kicking off the automatic voter registration, the big deal. 800,000 black Texans unregistered, 1.7 Latinos unregistered. If we automatically register, it will change the character of politics. Now, to those people, the poor people, black people, brown people, who in fact are disenfranchised because they have to pay a poll tax. My grandmother couldn't read and write. She had to make an X. It's a humiliation to vote. Please support the idea of automatic voters for all Americans, 18 and above.
Oh, well, Melanie, everybody, you all have something to say about this?
I just say, you know, the Reverend Jackson, he's right on time. And I think when it comes to being able to cure voter suppression in a real way, that's a very tangible solution. I think it's something that needs to be really pushed. Our young people who voted, the Gen Zers and millennials, were very much out there voting, and they have in these last year elections. I think this is something that we should get our youth to really champion in this fight to really continue in a real way to protect and save this democracy. Because the reality is those who never sleep is that I taught Reverend Jackson and Reverend Orange and many others.
Melanie?
The importance of voter protection.
Melanie, I'm going to give you 1 minute.
4, 3.
Okay.
Hold on. Hey, everybody. Closing thoughts on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'll see you tomorrow morning on the Santita Jackson Show. Melanie Campbell, convener of the Black Women's Round Table. 1 minute belongs to you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so very much, and I'll be brief. I'm going to say Reverend Jackson was pushing for automatic voter registration. He is right on time, and we need to pull our young people who really turned out, our Generation Z and millennials, to champion automatic voter registration as a solution to eradicating voter suppression in many ways, not all, but in many ways, and that we're going to keep on fighting and keep on pushing. We will continue to protect this democracy for the generations ahead of us.
No.
Our people informed and armed with the information to own our power in this country.
Amen. Thank you for all that you do. Greg Palast, I have 30 seconds. It's a tight 30 for you.
Okay, you have one day to see the film Vigilante, free or otherwise, but it's totally free. Go to vigilantemovie.com. This is the story of Georgia's vote suppression hitman named Brian Kemp, who the Wall Street Journal, New York Times have basically said should be our next president. Get the info. Go to vigilantemovie.com. That's today and tonight. That's it.
All right. There's a whole lot. Reverend Jackson, I've got 30 seconds for you.
Well, someone said that those gave they had to break down both I need today.
All right, everybody. And I hope to see you tomorrow morning on bright and early, 6 to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time on the Santita Jackson Show. You're going to hear so many of these people on the show. So excited that you all are with us today, and may God bless you. And in this Christmas season, for our brothers and sisters of other faiths, may the spirit of Christmas be with you. May God bless you. See you on Keep Hope Alive next week and on the Santita Jackson Show throughout the week. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
All right. See you tomorrow morning, everybody. God bless you. And remember, keep hope alive.
Thank you for listening to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. For more information on upcoming shows and guests, please visit our website at www.keephopealiveradio.com.
Melanie, thank you so much for being with us, girl. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So far, I got on a little late.
Girl, no, please. You got to come on. You got to come on my radio show.
Yes, definitely. And appreciate it. We got a fight ahead of us. I tell you that.
We do. I am all for because my father's the eternal optimist, and he ought to be, Reverend. But the fact is, we're just following. Reverend Warnock said, "Hey, we've got a mountain moment," but apparently, it was voter suppression. While they were breaking records, what the corporate media refused to address was the voter suppression that drove these people to break these records. They had no drop boxes, they had no alternatives. And I shudder to think, Melanie Campbell and attorney Terry O'Neill and attorney Sanat, I shudder to think about people whose jobs were imperiled because they just decided to go on and vote. That happened. You know that some people lost their jobs. They did.
There was a sense of determination, which gets to that hope, right? People were determined. And when the state tried to block early voting in Georgia, it made people pay attention that normally wouldn't have that time of year. And they knew that. That's why they cut the amount of days down and changed the length of time to do a runoff election. You really, the counties had a major challenge in pulling that off with very little time and Thanksgiving in between. But folks showed up anyhow.
They did, and they should have, and I'm appreciative. But you got to deal with the fact that
Santita, how can we change that? How can we change Georgia's voter suppression laws if it exists?
The law, we have to.
How do we do that?
We have to fight as hard to change the laws and get out in these streets to change the laws as hard as we did to vote. That's what happens.
Okay.
We got
to change the state legislatures.
Absolutely.
We got states' rights is what's on the rise, and so you had Michigan that flipped. At one point down in Virginia, you had both chambers that flipped after 25 years. That's not easy, but when there are more people who believe in inclusion than those who believe in exclusion, and the reality of overcoming that is going after these state races. It's going after governors and secretaries of state in the states, and especially in the South where we have the numbers. We really do have the numbers. If we could find a way, even in a state like Mississippi, it's never really had statewide black folks in office, the numbers are there. And also find a way. And it's not going to be a short distance. There's no way, but we need the reforms on a federal level to really impact it systemically. and that's not going to be easy. But faith is real, and works is real, and both of those combined. We will have to know it's a short and long term race. We will continue. We were out there with parties to the polls and doing things across polling places. Deborah Scott, did a great job with the power. Parties at the polls and just giving people some joy and finding ways, and all of us had buses hitting the streets and knocking doors and doing all sorts of things on the nonpartisan side, while the partisan folks did what they did. We have to do it, and we definitely don't have the same level of violence that Reverend Jackson and his generation dealt with us even getting the Voting Rights Act passed. So we just have to keep fighting.
Yes.
Somebody going nowhere. I almost cursed on Sunday. We're not going nowhere.
And Santita, I wanted to shout out real quick on Facebook Live the people that I had dinner with last night: Angelita, Tim, Sabrina, Alex, June, Cynthia. Because we had a robust discussion yesterday about voter mentality, which in fact impresses upon why a person would be a Democrat and why a person would be a Republican. I have a black friend who voted for Herschel Walker, and I have a black friend who voted for Reverend Raphael Warnock. In the essence of voter suppression, right? We're talking about how laws have kept people from being able to get their voices heard. But we have not taken a lot of time in order to talk about why people vote the way they do. I don't understand why anyone would vote for Herschel Walker to be in the United States Senate, particularly with his history and his credentials. But they did. And I think that is a bigger issue we need to tackle. Obviously, Georgia is not a, Democratic state. Atlanta, Savannah, Athens, all of those major cities are the ones that made the difference for Raphael Warnock. But in the large scheme of things, we need to think about all of those other people who were voting Republican.
Well,
why did they even do that?
Oh, well, because, look, you have a hemorrhaging of black people to the Republican Party. There's a lot of disappointment in the Democratic Party, and is it handled appropriately? There are arguments to be made. One of the things I think we have to be careful to not do is to demonize people. First thing we need to do is ask you, who are you voting for? Do you mind do you mind sharing that? Okay, why? Because I want to hear why you're voting for Warnock too. I mean, beyond the fact, because complexion doesn't change direction. So we need to begin to think through what the agenda is, because I know some black Republicans who come from the Art Fletcher, Gloria Toot, Bill Coleman school, who absolutely advocate for black people. I know that. And they exist, and they need to be supported. But we all need to come together wherever we are on either side of the partisan line and decide on the black agenda. So whoever is in office, we are not losing. I need someone.
How come we don't have a black agenda any longer?
No, you have people meeting at push all the time. There was never agreement on anything that we did. You just had in history, in hindsight, you look back and you see, oh, look at what Dr. King did. Oh, look at what so and so did. Look. Dr. King did not have the majority of black American support, and absolutely didn't have it when he died. My father went to work for him, and Reverend's still with us. He went to work for him when he was becoming his most unpopular. His peak of popularity is when he got that Nobel Prize. After that, most black people would not support Dr. King. Dr. King could not find a black pulpit to be in from coast to coast. When he died, he was killable because he was so unpopular in the black community, Anastasia.
But I don't understand how is it that we as a black people are unable to find common agenda?
No.
Black Immigrants Panel, right? And I've been advocating for that for a long time, because we have so many Haitian migrants that are not only in Illinois but have been shipped from Texas and Arizona.
Yeah.
My question, though, is how is it that we don't have a Black agenda that includes not only the diaspora, but the people here, like myself, like yourself? Why don't we have a Black agenda any longer?
No, I have always had a Black agenda. You know, the thing is, you have to find an organization that works for you and work with them. And I think, can we do a better job of what we're doing? Sure. But the fact is, Black people would not have gotten out of slavery here if we didn't have a Black agenda, Anastasia. We would not have gotten the Voting Rights Act. We would not have paved the way for you to come here if we didn't have a Black agenda. Because be very clear, all of our Black brothers and sisters who are part of the diaspora who come here on the strength of what Black Americans did here. And it was an agenda, even if we disagreed with each other. W.E.B. and Booker T. We've always had those fights. But somehow or another, at the end of the day, we have reconciled with each other, and we have said, okay, this is what we're going to do together. And so what we have to begin to do is work in our organizations and reach through our organizations and work with each other. That's what we have to do. You're never going to have a monolithic anything. It just doesn't. Girl, look, when you look at, if you see Roots, the first iteration of Roots, the Roots that Alex Haley produced, that he had a hand in producing,
right.
You see how what happened with Black Americans. See, we're on a vast subcontinent, okay? And this is the biggest, baddest, meanest empire the world has ever known, and we have fought it and we have won. But it has not been easy, and it has not been without its psychic breaks and the pain that we've had to endure. We've had that. We've had that. And we are, and we still continue to fight to be together. We do it because it is a fight. Because, you know, all it takes is one, if you are on your job, Anastasia, white people threaten when you speak to your Black coworker. You know that's true. And we're on Facebook Live, and I'm keeping it 100 with everybody here.
I thank you so much for having me today, and I'm glad that I had an opportunity to meet the panel. Panel, please keep in touch with me. I really appreciate all of your thoughts and concerns about the American people and how we can move us forward.
I'm gonna connect
And
you
I
to
would
Melanie.
say this too, that we all need to really weigh in right now. Call your congresspeople, those that's listed out there, and tell them to pass the John Lewis, the Senate specifically, John Lewis Restoration Act. They were able to, in real time, pass marriage equality. It can still be done, and push for it. Don't ever let off the gas. And that's what we have to do. And we're going to be out there fighting. We have to fight in the streets. We have to fight in the suites. We have to fight in the legislature. That is our plight in this country. And we have to constantly fight. And I think, you know, my hashtag is coalition, but always through unity, we can do much. But we are not, as you said, a monolith. But we showed up, and we were unity in Georgia. And it shows what we can do when we do come together for various areas to come together. We swooped in from within the state and from without the state, and we found a way to make sure that our people had all the opportunity to show up and show out, and they did, even with all the barriers.
Oh, look, because you don't want to make Black folks mad, Anastasia.
Yeah, right.
Because
don't take nothing from us.
Wait a minute, because when we get mad, we do show up and show out. I mean, because you saw that in the determination to vote for Barack Obama. We over-indexed in the vote. You saw that particularly in Reverend Jackson's second presidential run. You know, so we do have points, you know, when and where we enter. We do that. You know, we just have to work harder at it.
We need to get a agenda together right now in order to make sure that we know.
Well, she just gave you
and be clear. And voter ideology is another. But we need to get that together.
Yeah, I think we got to get rid of our brothers as well who feel lost. One of the things that we talked with a lot of brothers, not just in Georgia, but over the course.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a need to figure some of that out.
Yeah.
And really find ways. What we heard from younger brothers, older brothers, was feeling left out, feeling not seen. There are some things that have to be done on that level more systemically. As Black women, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. As far as owning our power unapologetically, and owning that power is not an exclusion of Black men, it is an inclusion of what we have, and that we have to leverage it for our community. I think we're doing that more and more, which is why you see more Black women who are breaking those barriers, and we have a VP, and we have a Black woman on the Supreme Court, all those things, and so many more judges, and also even winning in some cases statewide. More work, but that's the movement.
Yeah,
right?
shout out to the Black women, particularly in Georgia, who did the Stroll to the Poll campaign with members of the Divine Nine organizations, the sororities, and then got the fratters to the stratters roll out. I really appreciate all the work that they've been doing in Georgia. You do need to do more, but I'm proud of what you've done.
Well, and those are, I mean, the talented tenth, if you will. There was so much work that Black folks on the ground did, and that's where we all have to come together. Period. I'm hoping, and that's why I try to provide the forum that I do on my show and here. Because, we can, saving HBCUs. I mean, really having a real discussion about reparations and what that means. Does that mean a check to you, or does that mean a fund for Black businesses, getting our Black banks back, making sure that our HBCUs are funded indefinitely and fulsomely? I mean, there's just a lot that I think that we have to sit down, you're right, Anastasia, and think about doing. I mean, just say, okay, now what is it that we want? And if a Republican gets in, what are we asking for? Because I think that our agenda should change, if not. Whatever party is in power.
Because, Mia Love was a Black Republican from Utah. She was also of Haitian descent. But when Trump made the comments about Haiti and called it a shithole country, she lost her mind and she couldn't even keep herself together, and then she wasn't able to be reelected. But the opportunity for us as Black people in the grand scheme of things is that we can get an agenda and we can work towards that agenda.
That's
One
right,
of the things, of course, obviously, that I would want is Black immigrants in the United States.
But my thing is the Black folks, the foundational Black people who've been here. I want you to shout as loudly for them. I want her to lose her mind.
Go ahead. I love you.
No, because we're all brought over here on the same imperial project. There's no such thing as a West Indian. We are Black people who were brought over here to build this for Europeans. Period.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want you to lose your mind over Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and Haiti. That's the only. And it's true. Because it's all the same people. And, because we're watching whites who want to deal with the Black immigrant population, but they don't want to deal with the Black folks who built the country and who dealt with and who had to. They don't want to deal with slavery, like they don't want to deal with indigenous people and their pain. And America's not going to be right until you deal with the original injury. It ain't going to happen. Like France is not going to be right until they do right by Haiti. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. And I should be as outraged by France and their behavior toward Haiti, and you should be outraged by what I do, because it's all the same game. It's all the same game. We're all over here on the same imperial project. Yes, Reverend. I didn't realize you were still there, Daddy. Talk to me.
I think the Black agenda is understood now.
What's the Black agenda?
Getting Black person elected who makes sense.
Thank you.
For example, Clarence Thomas seated Thurgood Marshall. He was a humiliation candidate. The extreme right wing, at least somebody's Black. Okay. So that game of putting her to walk on us, trying to extend Clarence Thomas, but the guy South Carolina named Young. You don't know he's black. No, he's there. He'll be black. He did his votes with the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big part of it. That's why I'm talking about full voter registration. Empower people who know it.
And then, Reverend, I think we also have to support white people who support us.
And as I'm telling you, what we support, that's the record.
Well, you know, I'm just saying, because complexion doesn't change direction. You know that better than anybody. So black folks who make sense, white folks who make sense, people who make some sense, period.
Yeah.
You know, no one made more sense than Frank Watkins, Reverend.
No one.
No one. More black people left you. No one was more loyal to you than this white man from, where was he from, Missouri? No one was more loyal and clearer. So, I mean, I want some clear people, period. Period. You know, you can do so much mess under the cover of darkness, Anastasi and Melanie, and you can do too much mess. I don't want to brown up imperialism. I'm not feeling that. No. No. I'm an anti-imperialist, period.
I hear you, Sorrel, but at the end of the day, when Queen Elizabeth died, she brought forth the opportunity for a lot of Commonwealth countries who are black in order to make an agenda for themselves, and they have yet to do so.
And remember,
so
she asked her husband.
We need to bring an agenda together. We need to bring an agenda together, Sorrel.
But I'm in agreement with you. But remember, Queen Elizabeth also asked the Commonwealth, who were prepared to elect a black person to head it. She said, "Please shelve that. I want my son to head it." Remember that? She did that a couple of years ago. Remember that? Oh yeah, no.
He did it, but that's the problem.
No, I'm saying that's the problem, because remember Harry and Meghan were given oversight of the Commonwealth. They were going to take a black woman in there.
You need to talk about that next week.
And you know, yeah, God bless them. And I mean, God bless them. I'm just saying we have to make a decision about the Commonwealth. Oh no, I'm not feeling that. But that's just, you know, I don't think we have to make some decisions. You know, look, stop having the princess and queen fantasies. Do you know what this project was really about? Do you know why we are here?
But Edward Hoover specifically said that the biggest common denominator that would hurt people in the world, particularly in the United States, is black unity.
Of course.
Obviously, he didn't use the word black. He said Negro unity. But that's what we need to be at. That's where we need to do.
And they felt that way about in India, the Indians. Whenever we unite against the oppressive force, that's the problem, right?
Right. That is the problem, right?
But Reverend,
I'm looking to meet you soon. I'm looking forward to meeting you soon.
You haven't met him yet? You're at Push all the time.
Because you know I'm already a member of Rainbow Push, so I just wanted to make sure that the Reverend knows that I'm a member and I support you.
Yes, Reverend. Do you hear Anastasi speaking to you? She wants to see you. Reverend?
You know what I'm saying? I want the Reverend to know that I got his back, and I want him to get my back too.
Well, he's got your back. He's always had it. You were born with him covering your back.
Amen.
Reverend, you all need to talk to me quickly, because you know I need to run and powder my nose.
You're running back and you're running the rainbow agenda. Because they make us see that enough black people that live off the middle race. But when a black person the agenda, I just black the coalition is all about.
Amen.
That's true.
Amen.
While not losing ourselves here.
Exactly.
So, you know.
All right. Bye.
Okay.
I love Melanie.
Love you all.
I'm gonna reach out to you, Melanie. Let me know when you can come on my show. And Anastasi,
okay. Yes, ma'am.
Let me know when you can come when you're available.
Okay. All right. Have a good time. Merry Christmas.
Okay. Merry Christmas. Sending you much love.
Okay. Merry Christmas. Talk to you. Have a great day, everyone.